power tools and all this, and learning to create this jewelry that's being sold under our brand that really is taking a stand against abuse is very empowering for them. And the other really wonderful thing about and unique thing about Mend on the Move is that our jewelry is made from auto parts, and we get
It's always good to start with a laugh. At least I didn't have to make a joke. Thank you all for coming. If you're able, would you please stand for the presentation of the colors?
Color guard attention. Audience, please rise. Scout salute. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, post the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Scout side. Please join us in reciting the Scout Law, Scout Oath, and Auto Chord. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the Scout Law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. 2. Guests may be seated.
I want to thank you for coming and joining together to honor our veterans. This is a time to show our appreciation, our admiration, and respect for their service and sacrifice to their country. Not all veterans have experienced combat, but served in positions of necessity and support. We also want to recognize the families who also made sacrifices, often being left alone to worry, to raise the family, to dig the post holes, and even kill the spiders. Today, each veteran will be presented with a quilt of honor. It is an award, not a gift. The Quilts of Valor Foundation is a national organization founded in 2003 by Blue Star mom, Catherine Roberts. With a son deployed in Iraq, a gunner atop a Humvee, she felt 10 seconds away from panic, 24 hours a day, every day. It was at that time she had a dream. She envisioned a young soldier on the battlefront, seated on his bunk in a hunched position. In her words, I could see the war demons clustered around, dragging him down into an emotional gutter. Then, as if in viewing a movie, I saw him in the next scene, wrapped in a quilt. His whole demeanor changed from one of despair to one of hope and well-being. The quilt had made a dramatic change. The message of my dream was, quilts equal healing. The first quilt was presented November 2003. Since then, as of July 2022, 418,483 quilts have been awarded. With each quilt, the mission to honor service members and veterans is fulfilled. One human being reaching out and touching another without judgment, reaching out with acceptance and with acknowledgement of service to their nation in very trying circumstances. A quilt of valor is made of 3 layers, and each layer has its own special meaning. The top layer, with its many colors, shapes, and fabrics, represents the communities and the many individuals we are. The batting, the filler, is the center of the quilt. It is warmth. It represents our hope that this quilt will bring warmth, comfort, peace, and healing to the individual who receives it. The backing is the strength that supports the other layers. It represents the strength of the recipient, the support of his or her family, their communities, and their nation. Each stitch that holds the layers together represents love, gratitude, and sometimes the tears of the maker. Each quilt also represents a 3-part message from the giver to those receiving. First, we honor you for your service. We honor you for leaving all you hold dear and stand in harm's way in times of crisis, protecting us from the effects of war. Next, we know that freedom is not free. The cost of freedom is the dedication of lives of men and women like you, And this quilt is meant to say thank you for your sacrifice. And finally, this quilt is meant to offer comfort to you and to remind you that although your family and friends cannot be with you at all times, you are forever in our thoughts and hearts. As your name is called, would you please come forward? And when the microphone is handed to you, please share your branch of service, where you were stationed and/or deployed, the definition of your job, and any other experience you wish to share. Would Ron Abbott please come forward?
Most of you probably don't recognize me. Yeah, I was in the United States Army. As you can tell, I was in the paratroops. One of my favorite stories is my first time to come to Detroit. That was 1968. I'm sorry, 1967. Were any of you here in 1967? Does anybody remember what happened in 1967? So that was my first time. After I left here, I went off to Vietnam, served in the Airborne Infantry, Company C, 1st 506 Infantry. Vietnam came back. And after 3 years, I was released from the Army, and somehow I made it back to Detroit. That's it.
Dave Dutton.
My name's David Dutton, and my military service was in the British Army, and I didn't suffer a lot of hardships at that time. My hardships had mainly been in World War II, when escaping German bombing. But my basic training in the Army was in Devon, where I got the military training, shooting, all that kind of thing, bayonet drills and so on. And my technical training was in Reading, near London, where young people trained to do the instruments and things that we used in the Army. My branch of service was at Royal Electrical and Mechanical
Remember to say
Engineers.
thank you.
And,
Say thank you when you wrap it.
in the electrical side. It's not a long story, but and I didn't see any battles in Vietnam or in that time in Korea and so on. So fortunately, I was at home base, but I was there ready for whatever might have come up. Thank you.
To protect freedom requires collaboration and cooperation of many countries. Dick Fitzgerald.
I was in the U.S. Army 1951, 1953. I served 2 years in California, so I'm not a veteran combat veteran, but I liked being in the Army for, 21 years. I ended up working in machine records, which is IBM cards. And so it was a good experience. I went to college on the GI Bill, so I had a great history. I guess that's about it. Thank you.
Jim Horner.
Hello, I'm Jim Horner. I was in the Army from 1967 to 71 in a transportation company, which is what they call logistics today. We were responsible for planning and making arrangements for and conducting transportation of anything and everything that the Army required. We did not go overseas, but we had the satisfaction of knowing that we were sending things to those across the sea that needed it. Thank you.
Fred Laskos.
Good morning, everybody. I'm an unpopular person. I was in Vietnam, and I was a spoiled brat. I grew up on the west side of Detroit. I'm a Polack, and I had a Schwinn Panther bicycle. It's now worth. I gave it away over $5,000. I'm still dreaming about that. That helps me out. But we've all had that experience. But only son, spoiled, had a sports car, and I decided I wanted to make my parents proud of me. So I told my mother to sell the car, 57 MG. Sell it. I'm going to California, enlisting into the Marine Corps, and I'm going to hitchhike. So I hitchhiked from Detroit to California, Burbank, California, and being you all have been there, haven't you? I had 27 points. I was kind of a hot rod with that car. And Judge Lincoln was the presiding judge. And my mother went to court. And she presents me, well, where's your son? He enlisted in the Marine Corps. Oh, yeah. 27 points and never lost his license. Well, I had a commercial license. Somehow I kept it, never been taken away. Still have it, by the way. And he says, what kind of car does he have? 57 and 57. How much? And this is the guy. And my mother calls me out in Burbank. She says, guess what? Judge Lincoln bought your car for his daughter. So everything started turning out good there. Things started turning out. Got in the Marine Corps, went into boot camp, wound up in special forces. Narrated Vietnam Parade for Channel 4. They wanted us to say certain things. I love my country, but I don't like the way they act sometimes. And I'm not going to say who was telling us what to say. I'm just going to say, and there all three of us were in. I was in Marine Corps, Fish Warren, Navy, and Army. And we decided just to go to the bar the next time and not show up again, because they didn't want to, we wanted to tell them other things. You know, that was not only an unpopular war, but unlike World War II, you know, my dad fought, many of you know, I thank my Uncle Jack. Like I said, I'm a Polack, but my Uncle Jack was Jewish. I don't know if you know, everybody knows the Nederlanders, but they're pretty popular people. And Mr. Nederlander, I've come to find out, he come from a very influential background down there. And I want to thank him for his service. And my Uncle Jack, it was because of you too I went to Vietnam, but I went for you. You know, that was a very unpopular war. We lost 48,000 troops there. And I'm 100% disabled, and I still I feel for those that have died World War II, Germany, whatever was taking place there, concentration camps. I studied all this. We all did, you know. Sometimes you know what you're fighting for. Vietnam, when I came back, I'm sorry, I protested the war. Went to college, went against that, because I knew, based on what I seen, based on what I heard, that, yeah, you did your job. You know, I'm here today talking about it. I'm only proud of the fact that I'm alive. And I'm proud of the fact that I'm living in a country that I could say, hey, you screwed up. You know, the bottom line, you know, I don't care how much you give me. You'll never get 48,000 people back or something that should not have ever transpired. You know, so that's my thing today. Thank God for all the veterans from Vietnam and every other war. I love my country. I fight for it again. Right or wrong, I guess. But I won't have an MG.
Russ Perry.
I'm another guy that went into the war because of too many points. Yeah, I went, that was during the end of the Vietnam War, back in '71. I stayed out and went to college for 1 year and then decided to go in the Air Force. Now, I spent my first year in Texas, but after that I spent all the rest of my time in North Dakota fighting the long winters and the flatlands. But my job was a wing historian for the 319th Bomb Wing, which is basically, I kept an active archives of all the goings-on of the wing, of all the maintenance and the morale. I don't know I can't remember all the things I had to do, but I had to do it every, like 4 times a year. I got out in '75, and that was after the Vietnam was over with. So it's being in North Dakota, I never had to go. So that's it.
Jim Poppelreiter.
Good day, Jim Poppelreiter here, and I had just started a new job with West Bloomfield Fire Department, and 9 months later, got the lovely letter in the mail from Uncle Sam saying, we want you, and was drafted, went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training, and then was put on a jet plane with 200 and some other people, sent to Maryland, where I was assigned to Fort George G. Meade, 1st Army Headquarters, and found out I was going to be a military policeman. Went through that training there, right in the company, because they needed so many at the time that they couldn't provide the training at Fort Gordon, Georgia, where they usually did it. So went through that, was assigned to the traffic division, started working as a traffic cop on the street because it was an open post, so we dealt with civilians and military people. And later was assigned as a traffic accident investigator, where I worked for a short time and then ended up in the office working in administration with the traffic section. So that's my story. Let's do it. Came back to Michigan and went back to fire department and finished a 44-year career. So thank you.
Peter Schland.
Thank you. There are 2 philosophies that I've always lived with in my life, and that is the old Bugs Bunny concept of having a carrot in front of you to go after that carrot and conquer that carrot. And I've done that with every aspect of my life. I think it's a good one, it's a wholesome one, and it's very active. The other one, Nike came up with a philosophy that I really love, and that's their slogan, just do it. Don't make excuses. Don't get on committees that hassle things over for a year or two and then come up with a conclusion that most people could come up with in about an hour. So that's how I've lived my life. I started out as pre-dental, and I found out I was in the draft qualification. So that was going to come up in October. In August, I went down to the U.S. Army and found out that the medical corps were looking for 2 dental assistants. So there was 3 of us that were to qualify for that. I didn't care whether it was first or second, but I wanted one of them. I did get one of those, went off into the military as a dental assistant and oral hygienist. We were stationed at Fort Sam. I did my basic training in Fort Leonard Wood, better known as Fort Lost in the Woods, if you've ever been there. From there, we went down to Fort Sam and started examining troops coming and going from Vietnam. They found out our company, 325th Medical Corps, was very excellent in what they did. So they decided to ship us over to Vietnam. Sometimes you were wishing that you weren't that good, okay? But we went to Vietnam, we did a good job on it, and it was funny because I started with the dental aspect of it and then expanded out into the whole 14 stations that the Medical Corps does to examine troops coming and going. And that was very effective. Then after that, there were 4 people that came from Washington, D.C. and wanted to start a program. And we weren't sure what it was, but all 140 of us listened to it. And 4 of us volunteered to do this. And the program was to help wounded or dead soldiers in the field. So we had to go through special training. They set up some units for us. We went through airborne. We had to learn how to land on rocks, bushes, trees, water, rapids, everything. And then we went to special forces after that, learn how to spy on people, how to check up on things without people knowing what you're doing. And the last one was the Green Berets. The final test on that was they gave you a 2-quart canteen and a Bowie knife and said, we'll see you in a week, don't get caught. So we were in the forest scrounging around on that for a week, and that was kind of traumatic. It was kind of stressful. But anyway, after that, then we had our opportunity to show what we learned. And one of the incentives, I know this is terrible to say, but they said they would offer us not $1,000 a month, but $4,000 a month for being these people, okay? And what we did, there was a crew of 3 people. You had a helicopter pilot, you had a cable operator, and you had a fellow in a Kevlar basket that would go down, pick up wounded soldiers or even dead soldiers, because we wanted to have these people come back to their family so they could have a proper burial. So that was what I did. I was in the Kevlar basket group, and we would drop down 500 feet from a helicopter, go down, pick up the wounded soldier, put him into the basket, made sure he had his arms, legs, everything about him, and strap him in, jump on top of him, and take off and go to the field hospital. That was our purpose in life, to do that. Did that for about 1.5 years. I could expound on many, many scary stories that you probably don't want to hear. But it was one of these things that you had to speak positively about yourself, thank the God at night for having to be alive, and wake up in the morning and say, hey, let's go out and do it again. Please stay with us, okay? There were 4 of us that did this for 1.5 years. We did finally lose one person that got shot out in the field, and the other three of us still communicate during Veterans Time, back and forth to each other. So that's what I did for Vietnam.
Jeffrey Telford.
I was drafted, and I had several unusual things happen. By the way, I got to say these are magnificent. Anyway, when I was at Fort Wayne, in the induction center, I'm standing there after my physical, and you're sitting there in your shorts, or standing there in your shorts, and this guy comes up, and calls my name, and I stepped forward, and he looked at me, and I was about, 30, 40, maybe 50 pounds overweight, and he looked at me and says, "You'd never make it. Step back." So I stepped back, and he said to the three guys standing right next to me, he goes, you, and you. You are now Marines. Let's go." Well, I've often regretted that I was that overweight, but I'm also very thankful I didn't go where most of the Marines went. Then I went to the induction center, or the processing center at Fort Knox, and they go through your history, and you have a form there you filled out. And the sergeant was walking down the aisle, and he just happened to look down, looked at my records, and says, "Oh, hey, you got to fill out this other form for this guy." So they filled it out. I didn't know what it was. And so I went through basic training at Fort Knox, and at the end of 8 weeks, the sergeant's reading where everybody's going and what they're going to do, and they're all infantry, going on for infantry training, and he came to my name, and he looked at my MOS, which is your job in the Army, which was 01 Echo to Romeo. And he looks at it, he had no idea what it was. So he brings out this book and looks up, and it turns out I was a mathematical statistical analyst. Well, in college, I had a degree in mathematics. That was my major. So I ended up at Edgewood Arsenal at the headwaters of the Chesapeake Bay. Now, the day I got on post, it was 98 degrees. It was 98% humidity, and it was a clear blue sky. Okay. Edgewood Arsenal is home of chemical warfare, and that's where I was stationed. And to this day, when people ask me, "Well, what did you do?" I say, I signed a piece of paper that says, "I can never tell you." And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
William Winchief.
I don't have a story like that. My name is Bill Winchief, and I was in the United States Army for 6 years, and I took my basic training in Fort Ord, California, which was kind of a nice place to be if you weren't in the Army at the time. After basic training, I went to OCS, and if you know what OCS is, it's a pretty strenuous operation. For the first 4 weeks, everything is very, very rigid, and then they start to treat you more like a human being again. And during that last 2 weeks, I met a guy named Colonel Straub, and he was in the Signal Corps, and he was looking for a Signal Corps officer, and I told him that I was a ham radio officer and operator, And then I knew Morse code, and sure enough, when I graduated, he picked me up, and I was in the 156th Signal Battalion from then on. And our primary job was communications from service members in Vietnam to their loved ones back at home. And we worked like heck to make that happen. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Wow. Mark Dietrich. Mark Dietrich. Pardon me? Thank you.
Well, most of you probably don't even know me. I came here as a guest. I've been a guest for about 5 or 6 times, and this is certainly more than I ever anticipated getting. But I was not drafted. I was a volunteer into the Air Force. I went to officer training school, stayed in for a career, got out as a major, and served all over the United States, served in the Middle East, served up in Europe, and and basically I went in as a very immature young kid, and came out as a much more mature man. I went in single. I came out with a wife and 3 kids. Okay? And the wife, basically, I'm glad that they acknowledged the spouses, because the spouses have to pick up the household goods and move every 3 years overseas, back, north, south, east, and west. And that is a real pain in the neck. So thank you very much. And the kids have to move as well, change schools and all that. So it's a lot more than just the service member. You know, it's the wives, it's the spouses, it's the relatives, it's all the birthdays and anniversaries you missed, and all really the sacrifices you made. But thank you very much.
We also want to remember Peter Blum and Larry Lankford. They were honored with a Quilt of Valor at their home, as they were unable to be with us today. If you find imperfections, just remember that they were made with love, and only God makes perfection. Finally, we salute you, and we hope that these quilts will bring you comfort and cheer when you need it. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Thank you. So, following the retrievement of the colors, you are invited to a reception where you can express your thanks and gratitude to these wonderful sacrificial men. Thank you for your service. And as they retrieve the colors, let us sing God Bless America.
Color guard, attention. Audience, please rise. All right. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Scout salute. Please put your right hand over your heart if you are not in uniform. Color guard, retrieve the colors. Color guard, retreat. Color guard, halt. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much.